Right, good morning, everyone. And beginning to feel not so strange to be saying good morning to you on a Friday. This is our seventh one, and we nearly reached the 8th week since the started. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Judy Trotter, Head of Adult Education at JW3, and obviously losing my articulation. But thank you all for joining us this morning, and especially our presenter at this time. A lot has happened over the week since we last met. At that point, there was just a glimmer of hope, and thank goodness that glimmer came to fruition over the weekend. But obviously, we're still in a very difficult situation. And as I've said every week, it has proved so important for us all to be together, connect with each other, and to connect with Israel. And this is our one chance a week to connect with someone from Israel. As usual, we will have questions if there's time at the end. So please start putting them from as early as you want in the chat, and I will post them for you. I was asked each week to do the bio for those of you who haven't seen it on the web. So Ittay, born in Israel, grew up in Australia, and we first met when he was involved in setting up Limud in Melbourne. He moved to Israel in 2018, and in 2020, when we went into lockdown, we opened up the world, and Ittay gave us 2 wonderful series over that lockdown period on Zoom. So it's really good to see you on screen again. I just wish it was for different reasons. As it's not an easy task that we ask our presenter each week. But please share with us what's uppermost on your mind this morning, and sketch out how people and you have been feeling this week. Over to you with a great thanks.
Thanks, Judy. So it's nice to be here in Jerusalem, and g'day to everyone in London. So yeah, I'm a journalist with an Australian news site, +61J Media, and I thought for today I wanted to tell you about a few things that you won't find out from reading a newspaper, because I'm sure a lot of the people on this Zoom are reading a lot of news. So I spent the last week wandering around Jerusalem with my camera, and I took some photos. I want to show them to you just to give you a sense of what life is like here, beyond the stuff that you know about Gaza. But actually, before I go to Jerusalem, I want to start in Sderot. So Sderot is a very small city next to the border of Gaza. And these are photos from Sderot last week, and you notice that Sukkot, which is a festival that ended over 50 days ago, the Sukkot are still standing in Sderot now. And I think Sderot's probably the only Jewish city on earth where Sukkot are still standing now. And the reason Sukkot are still standing there is because, as you know, the October 7th attack happened on the last day of Sukkot. So everyone left without having time to take apart their Sukkot. And so you can see throughout the city, this is what the Sukkot look like now. You know, they've been standing already for Sukkot and 53 days. And all the people in Sderot are now in hotels all over the country. And so there's some irony about, I guess, you build a temporary dwelling during Sukkot, and then for the next 53 days, you live in a temporary dwelling. And something that I think a lot of people don't realize maybe is that there's over 200,000 Israelis now, including the residents of Sderot and Kiryat Shmona and Shlomi, all of the border regions, who are living in temporary dwellings. They're in hotels, they're in Airbnbs, they're staying with friends, and we don't call them refugees, obviously, because they're Israelis and they're living in Israel, but there's something about that temporariness that even though they're physically safe, they're away from home. And so the Sukkot for me sort of symbolizes that, and I think it's an important thing to remember. Moving to Jerusalem, so this is the street where I live on Emek Rephaim in the German colony, and you'll see this Cafe Ben Ami, where I'm guessing many of you have had a coffee when you've come here. There's an Israeli flag on the window, and that's pretty common that most cafes now have flags on the windows to sort of boost morale. This is an ice cream shop, also just across the road. So you can see a sign with the logo of Jerusalem. It says Yachad Nenatzeach, together we'll win. And next to it says manat glida bechinam lechayalim v'shotrim. So it says anyone that comes into this shop with a police or an army uniform gets a free ice cream. And a lot of businesses are doing that now to show that they're supporting the war effort. So, you go to McDonald's, you get an extra burger if you're a soldier, ice cream shop, extra ice cream. So it's something that you can see that you don't see this when it's not a war, but it's something else you see on the street. This is an Egged bus. And you can see, I know it's clear, it says B'yachad nenatzeach, Am Yisrael Chai. And then in between that, there's the announcement of when the next station is. Here you have the outside of an Egged bus, and it says Yisrael Chazaka B'yachad. So for the last 5 weeks, they've dropped all the regular advertising that they used to put on the sides of buses, and you only have these messages sort of encouraging, solidarity, and we're going to win this, and we got this, and Am Yisrael Chai, and those sorts of messages. This is also on my street. Someone put up a huge banner that says thank you with a picture of President Joe Biden because, he's been very unwavering in his support. So that's kind of lit up at night as well. It's in quite a prominent place that a lot of people walk past. This is Max Stock, also, how they have a sign Yachad Nenatzeach. This is outside the Hadar Mall, Yisrael Hayom, Yisrael Machar, Yisrael Nenatzeach, Israel today, Israel tomorrow, Israel will win. So, you can't leave the house without hearing Israel will win many, many times. That's really part of the vibe of the streets at the moment. Even, I bought a pillow from Osherad, and even the shopping bag says Yachad Nenatzeach, together we'll win, on it. So it's really everywhere. And even my Cellcom, which is my cable provider, they've made all their Harry Potter films free during the war to strengthen the national morale. So usually, these are pay-per-view things because we all love Harry Potter. Best thing to ever come out of Britain. So now you can watch Harry Potter for free. So there's all sorts of ways that the war effort kind of filters into your life. This is a volunteering center called the Hamal, where I've been doing some volunteering in Jerusalem, where people packing clothes, baby products for evacuees from the south that have been moved to Jerusalem. This is the Jewish Agency building on Keren HaYesod, also with Am Yisrael Chai. You can see some pictures of hostages that are on benches. There's lots of protests still happening, calling for the Israeli government to, continuing advancing negotiations to free the hostages. This was the walls of the old city of Jerusalem 2 weeks ago, with pictures of many of the hostages on the walls. And then I'll get now to the past week. So the past week has been a real roller coaster of emotions, with many of the hostages finally coming home. I just want to highlight a few stories that I found particularly touching. So Avigail Dan was one of the youngest hostages, and she was sadly kidnapped without her parents, as in her parents were killed on October 7th. She fled to her neighbor's house, which is how she survived, and then she was kidnapped with her neighbors. And so for the last 53 days, this 3-year-old girl has been in captivity without her parents, and she's also an American citizen. And so when she was freed, this is her uncle and aunt. This photo, everyone was sharing it because it was just so so moving to see Avigail smiling again. And Joe Biden had personally intervened in this case because she was an American citizen. So the next day, there was a cartoon in Israel's newspaper showing Joe Biden holding a cake for Abigail's 4th birthday, which she'd missed because she was in captivity, and now she's going to have a 4th birthday now that she's home back in Israel. So that was a very moving story. Emily Hand, I think maybe a lot of you have heard of. She's a dual Irish citizen and Israeli citizen. When she was freed, her picture was put on the front of the Sun and many other places. She had a very traumatic experience in captivity. In fact, that when she came out, to her father, she could only whisper. And her father said to her, "Why aren't you talking?" And she said, "Well, they told us that we're not allowed to talk. We have to whisper." And so she's still, even though she's been out for 3 days, she still whispers because she got so used to not being able to talk, to use her voice. This is a picture of her, realizing that people around the world had put up signs, of her captivity, and now she's free. So that was also very, very moving to see. I'll just skip this. This is a few of the hostage photos that are around Jerusalem at the moment. And you can see that instead of taking them down, which some people have done, other people have started writing Babait at home next to those that have come home, which has also been really heartwarming to see. So in terms of where we're up to with the hostages, there's been 100 that have now been returned, including over 25 Thai hostages and a Filipino hostage, and the rest are Israeli citizens. And there's still 143 still in captivity. This morning, the ceasefire ended, so Israel, there was 3 rockets fired at Sderot by Hamas, and Israel is again conducting airstrikes in Gaza, and it's possible that ground troops may restart fighting soon as well. So the final thing I want to say before I go to questions is Israel currently in the war faces what I call a Sophie's choice of 2 very difficult choices. Israel can either continue to uphold the ceasefire and free the hostages and release more Palestinian prisoners, or it can stop the ceasefire, stop the negotiations, and put all of its effort into defeating Hamas. And Michael Oren, who's Israel's former foreign minister, wrote a column about this dilemma of, do you free the hostages or do you defeat Hamas? And he said the following. He says here, "Forget the military victory," my daughter exclaimed. "Israel's only goal must be to free the hostages. If the state won't do everything to rescue my children, should they someday fall prisoner, how can I send them to the army?" To which my son replied, "Without an Israel, you won't have an army to send them to. Between my daughter's position and my son's, which should I choose?" Questions?
Wow, that was, as you say, a very different way of looking at it, and so interesting. Thank you. I have to say, I was working on last night. I didn't realise the ceasefire had ended. The last I heard, it was going to be extended.
It just ended a couple of hours ago. It's just this morning.
So there's negotiations to extend it, just failed.
They failed. Well, Hamas fired rockets into Israel, so it's finished now.
Okay, Japanese put Lord of the Rings. I think there was someone who hadn't been able to get the link. I might have missed the reference to that. Maybe they're showing Lord of the Rings free as well as...
probably Lord of the Rings too.
That's the best thing to come out of
Well, Lord of the Rings is all about a battle between good and evil with a hero called Frodo. So, it feels like something appropriate to watch at this time,
Right, so we haven't got questions in the chat, and we have tried to give them plenty of time. So if people do want to ask their own questions, if you use the yellow hands up, we can do it that way for a change. Let me just see what we didn't answer. What do you, and again, this is so much, but how would you see the war ending, and how would you see Gaza looking after that?
I can't predict the future, so I don't know. I can say what I want to happen, but I don't know how no one knows how it's going to end, and that's why obviously there's so much anxiety that so many Israelis feel about this right now. So, but I have no idea how it's going to end.
So, how safe do you feel in everyday life at the moment? How much normality is there? So we were being told a couple of weeks ago how places started to reopen. Very quiet and being showers. Is that still the case?
Look, I think it really depends on where you live in Israel. If you live in the south, your life is not normal at all. You've been evacuated. If you live on the border with Lebanon, you've been evacuated. So if you live in Ashkelon, you're under constant rocket attack. Even Tel Aviv's had a lot of rockets. The ceasefires calm things down a lot. Now that it's over, I imagine those places will still be under rocket fire. I'm personally okay in Jerusalem because we have very, very few rockets here. So Jerusalem is yachasit, beseder, like weekend, the cafes are open, I'm still going to work, like there's still the schools are on, they're not on Zoom anymore. So my kids can go to school every day, they can ride the bus. So it's normal. I think the thing that's missing is there's like, I don't know, it's like 300,000 people are in the army at the moment. So everyone's missing a husband, a wife, a son, a daughter, who's been called up to serve. There's a lot of businesses that are closed because, all those people they owned a factory, they were a teacher, they were a bus driver, they were, all sorts of things. So there's a real shortage of, like you can see a lot of people are missing from society because they've been called up. A lot of people are sitting on the Lebanon border because Hezbollah's, also a great threat to Israel. And so there's a huge disruption of life, and also it costs a lot of money. I mean, Israel spent over 50 billion shekels a month on the war effort that's not budgeted for. So that also affects the economy in all sorts of different ways as well. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to ask you about the economy, but obviously that's all of these questions. I'm not expecting an answer. I'm expecting an opinion. I've lost what I was going to say. I was asked about bombing South Gaza, but obviously that's not going to be just yet. But do you think there's a possibility they will?
There were flyers dropped on Khan Yunis today, which is in the southern Gaza, telling people to evacuate. I don't exactly know where they can evacuate to, but there were leaflets dropped on southern Gaza today.
Right, I was going to say, please don't raise your hand because I can't see you.
I can say Jean has raised.
Yes, Jean's done it the right way. So if you can find the hand that you can see Jean's just done, you can jump to the top of my list and I can see you've done it. So Jean, please go ahead. Spotlight you.
Hi, no, thank you. That was brilliant. My question is that I know that at the beginning of the war, the US was, very forthright in its support of Israel, quite rightly. But don't you think there's been a bit of a shift recently, particularly with the statements of Blinken yesterday, and that in some ways, I feel, and a lot of commentators have made this point, that the US is trying to, because of its relationship with Iran, is trying to tie the hands of Israel. Because I feel that Israel is really fighting for its existence. And there are constantly these conditions placed on Israel. And I understand the dilemma of defeating Hamas versus hostages. But I feel that there are standards expected of Israel that no other country actually in the world is held to those standards, and how the Israeli, the people actually living in Israel at the moment feel about that. Whatever we may want to say publicly about, it's great that US is supporting, is it really, and is its efforts actually undermining what Israel and the IDF are trying to do?
Yeah, so look, the US and many other European countries and Australia and Canada, New Zealand, etc., have all said to Israel, you can fight Hamas according to the rules of IHL, International Humanitarian Law, which, has various standards, proportionality, distinction, those sorts of things. Those standards are expected of every country that goes to war. They're expected of Britain, of the US. That's what war has rules, and so you need to follow them. There are obviously many groups that are not countries that don't follow them, Hamas being one of them, ISIS, etc. And so it's an unbalanced war because Israel's not fighting a state. It's fighting a terrorist group, and a terrorist group's not doesn't hold itself bound by international law of distinction, proportionality, etc. In terms of Blinken's comments yesterday, so yeah, he basically said to Israel, we're still backing you, but you can't do this forever. You've got a couple of weeks and you need to finish the job. And when you finish the job, you have to do it with minimal civilian casualties, and you need to, you can't use the level of force that you used on the north in the south. What that means is practically that Israel can't defeat Hamas without using an immense amount of force and killing immense amount of people, and I think Israel knows that, and that goes back to the dilemma of should Israel just cut its losses and free the hostages, but on the other hand, that leaves Hamas, ready to fight another day? Or does Israel, try and go for a war till the end, meaning that means that Israel will lose its American support and potentially lose, many of its friends that it has left in the world. It's a really tough dilemma, and that's the dilemma the government has to deal with at the moment.
Right, and thank you, Ittay. I'm going to go to Basil now because someone kind of told me he had his hand up. Basil, hi.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, JW3, for these very important Friday mornings. What really just has disturbed me all the way through, why was Israel caught out so badly? It really was. What was happening? What really was the Secret Service or everything dealing with? They must have had the feeling all the way along the line that there's going to be another one. I mean, were there tunnels being built? It's a little bit confusing here in London, but I really feel that Israel was, for the second time, caught out very badly.
Thank you, Basil.
Look, there's definitely echoes of the Yom Kippur War in terms of what happened on October 7th. Based on the Israeli news reports I've read, there's two factors. One is arrogance and the other is sexism. I'll explain both. The first is there was a lot of evidence that Hamas were planning this. There were reports written about it. There was videos of training camps where Hamas were doing raids on mock kibbutzim in Gaza. There was Hamas were driving trucks close to the fence many times. There was increased farmers, picking fruits, working fields next to the fence. That all things that should have been red flags that this were being ordered, this was happening, and they were all ignored because Israel just thought we powerful Hamas is weak and they would never do this, or if they tried to, we could just squash them in a second. And then the other thing that's more concerning is so the wall between Israel and Gaza is one of the most secured walls on earth, and there's many eyes on that wall all the time. And the female observers that they sit on these towers and they sit on these computer desks as well to watch this 24-hour footage. All of them were reporting to their commanders constantly, we see something happening, we see truck movements, we see training happening, and they're constantly disregarded by their male superiors, and so a lot of people have raised the question of sexism, that why weren't these young female soldiers listened to when they several times gave that warning. And Israel, I assume, will have an inquiry after the war into all of these matters, and hopefully we'll learn the lessons. But it seems like we didn't learn the lessons from Yom Kippur because this happened again. And I think I'll just say one other thing about the north. I think the reason why there's some 100,000 soldiers now sitting on the Lebanon border is because we don't want Hezbollah to do an October 7th to us, because we know that they have the ability to do that. So in one sense now, I think Israel's taking the threat of Hezbollah much more seriously because of what happened on October 7th. Thank
you. Victor.
Thanks, Julian, and good morning. A question for you, Ittay. I know that most of the Western governments are saying that the only outcome of this should be a two-state solution. I've seen that they've been told both in Gaza and in the West Bank, saying that 85% of the Palestinians support Hamas. How do the regular Israelis feel about the two-state solution, even after Hamas is gone?
Yeah, so the exact number is it's 76% of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank support Hamas. That was a poll that came out last week. There was also an Israeli poll that said, do you think the IDF is using enough force in Gaza? And 57% of Israelis said the IDF is not using enough force in Gaza, and 1.8% said it's using too much. So a lot of Israelis want the Israeli government to go in even harder in Gaza, and a lot of Palestinians support Hamas, mainly because of the prisoner issue. It's very, very popular in Palestinian society to free prisoners. Over 8,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails that, a lot of Palestinians want them to come home. And so the fact that Hamas was able to free prisoners this week, which very few other Palestinian groups have been able to do over the years, has made them grow in popularity dramatically because of that. So a lot of people here don't want the two-state solution, and that is very sad. And again, I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen there, but a lot of the world thinks the two-state solution is the best option for solving this, but it's not something people want here on either side at the moment. In fact, even more frighteningly, the Israeli polls, when Israelis were asked what's your preferred solution, over 50% of Israelis said either reoccupying Gaza indefinitely or expelling Palestinians from Gaza to another country. So there isn't a lot of support for a two-state solution, which is perhaps understandable during a war, but very sad and frightening.
That leads nicely to the next question, which is, people must be living with a heightened state of fear and anxiety. How can courage and strength be sustained, especially in the army?
I don't know about in the army because I'm not in the army at the moment, but I can say, look, the reason I showed you those photos all around the streets with the Yachad Nenatzeach and the Israeli flags and that sort of thing is there is a big attempt to sort of boost morale and tell people we've got this and we're going to win, and I think that reduces anxiety a lot. I don't know if those slogans are true, but I think that's what they do. And there's also a lot of messages on the radio and from Picud Oref, the Central Command, constantly talk how to talk to your kids, and there's a lot of programs in school and counselling, and but what can I say? We are a very resilient people. We've gone through a lot in our history. Think of how many festivals we have in Judaism about people trying to kill us and then us winning at the end. So we have a long tradition of this, and I hope we'll survive this too, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of day. I don't know. Simchat Torah won't be the same again next year. Let's just put it that way. I think we'll remember this for many years to come, and it will shape our identity for the future, for the rest of our lives.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Hamas didn't agree to release more hostages. Do you think that it's because they are not captive in the surrounded area in Gaza? And therefore not to be released?
I don't know. There's two options of why they didn't release them. Either Israel didn't agree to pay the price they wanted. I'm guessing that they're starting to ask for more than 3 Palestinian prisoners per Israeli hostage now, or they don't know where they are, or they're dead, or they're held by other groups like Palestinian Islamic Jihad or other, Palestinians who kidnapped, over 3,000 Palestinians came into Israel on October 7th. So we know that some hostages are in houses they're not held by Hamas. So that's probably the 3 options to that question.
Thank you. And we have a question. Carla, I can't spotlight. Carla, do you want to ask a question?
Yes. Hi. There is a bit of a sense, or at least I have a sense, that maybe some communities in Israel feel that they are not being really protected. I've read some things about some kibbutzim and Arabs nearby going to the olives and the military allowing them, while the community didn't want to allow access because they were afraid, or things like that, like someone reporting people taking pictures before the day before the Jerusalem attack yesterday, and that it was disregard, like those kind of things, like police or the military are not really listening to the population, and that feeling that I've been reading about. I don't know what you can say about that.
Yeah, so you've touched on a few different incidences there, but I'll say just in general regarding Arabs in Israel. So look, there was 9 Arabs killed on October 7th, and there was 22 Arabs taken hostage. So Arabs were victims of October 7th as well. It wasn't just an attack on Jewish Israelis. There's a lot of concern Arabs have at the moment about freedom of speech. There's over 170 Arabs have been arrested for posting various statements on social media that have expressed sympathy for people dying in Gaza or calling for the war to stop. That's been labelled as incitement. Most of them go to court and then they're released. So there is a big concern about freedom of speech for Arabs. And then there's also concern about there was a terror attack in Jerusalem yesterday morning where 2 Israelis were killed, and a third was killed by friendly fire by a soldier who thought that he was a terrorist, which was, he was actually trying to kill the terrorist, but which was a very tragic circumstance. So yeah, a lot of people are very much on edge and very fearful about, in a sense, it feels a bit like COVID in the sense that you kind of stay home unless you need to leave, because every time you leave, you don't know what's going to happen, and we are in a very uncertain situation. And I think police and security are doing their best to keep a lid on it, but it's very hard, and people want to stay close to community. Like I can say personally, like I don't usually go to shul, but I've started going to synagogue a lot more since October 7th, because there's some comfort you get about just singing and being with friends and having community around you, and that helps you, I guess, be resilient and hopeful in times like these.
Thank you. That's a really good place to end, and thank you for talking so in a different way, showing us what life's like in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I just wanted to also share one last thing. If anyone wants to stay in touch, this is the newspaper I write for. It's called +61j.net.au. You can subscribe and you'll get a weekly email for free with our updates from Jerusalem. We're also on Instagram at +61j, or you can email me if you have any questions as well.
Thank you so much, Ittay, and I hope to see you again in slightly better times.
Amen.
For those that someone just asked me about the being able to watch this and the previous 6. They're on our website. They're uploaded to our website on the page called JW3 TV.
Yeah.
So do look there as well. And if you want me to send you links, I can also do that.
Yeah, and I think someone also asked for the slides, so I'll send them to Judy, and if anyone wants the photos, you're welcome to share them. Just credit me as the photographer.
I think this was the most chat we've had in. So
yeah.
Thank you everyone for taking part, and thank you for the questions. And Ittay, thank you for allowing time for that.
Yeah, bevakasha. Yeah.
We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Shabbat shalom to everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Stay safe and warm. We're very cold here today.
Okay. Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. Bye.